right, let's talk about the Las Vegas Raiders here for a little bit. Look, obviously, this team is going through a lot of changes, specifically at the quarterback position, moving off Derek Carr, bringing in Jimmy G. They drafted Aiden O'Connell. And we have some very interesting comments and some interesting news involving the quarterback position as the Raiders get ready for 2023. And I think this kind of slid under the radar a little bit, but I think this could potentially be a massive sign for what the Raiders believe they have at quarterback.
Yeah, Nick, I think that this is a very interesting point to bring up. It shows, where the Raiders coaches are coming from, their roots, what they're thinking about, and how important this quarterback trio could potentially be. But I want to ask the Raiders fans, we're right around the corner. Season is coming up. Just barely a week left before the first game of the season. So Raiders fans, we want to know in the comment section below, what is your final prediction for this season's record? Now, I don't want you to be negative. I want you to be honest. I think this could be a really good season for the Raiders. There's a lot going for them. So give us your honest Raiders record prediction in the comments below. We're going to hold you to it. So let us know in the comments below. But Nick, let's get on into it. What's going on with the Raiders?
Yeah, so right now, the quarterback position in the NFL, in terms of how teams set up their rosters, there's usually a general theme. And normally, by a theme, I mean most teams, virtually all of them, have two quarterbacks on their final 53-man roster, their starter and their backup, whether he's a veteran, rookie, a lot of experience, no experience. Most teams have two guys. The one exception tends to be really talented teams that have an injury-prone starter and a potentially injury-prone backup as well. That's like the Miami Dolphins with Tua and Mike White are on their roster. They have Skylar Thompson as well, just because that's the team that has a lot of injury problems at all levels of the quarterback position. But the Las Vegas Raiders right now have recently come out and have had three quarterbacks on their final 53-man roster. And there's an interesting report out of NBC Sports that highlights it. Mize, if you want to throw up the report, I will read from it. All right, Raiders rookie Aiden O'Connell played so well in the preseason that some wondered if he jumped veteran Brian Hoyer to be Las Vegas's backup behind Jimmy Garoppolo. At least based on the team's initial 53-man roster, that did not turn out to be the case, as both Hoyer and O'Connell remain on the roster. The plan was to go with three QBs, and not for any specific reason other than we felt like we had three guys that were capable of being roster players, McDaniel said this week via Adam Hill of the Las Vegas Review-Journal. Aiden has obviously got a lot of developing in front of him. Brian has played plenty of football, and obviously we're excited about Jimmy. All right, so what jumped out to me very interestingly about this is that every single team that I've seen that has a young rookie they like, an example of that is the Cleveland Browns with Dorian Thompson-Robinson. They keep him on the active roster at the number 2 spot, and they move the veteran to practice squad, or they cut him and move on. What's very interesting to me is the Raiders kept all three guys. They kept Hoyer on, obviously be the veteran to back up Jimmy Garoppolo, but they kept Aiden O'Connell on the active roster as well to protect him, because when you moved on to the practice squad, obviously any team can come in and pick you up off the practice squad for free. It's like you're essentially a free agent at that point, and every single player who's on the practice squad wants to be on an active roster. So if you put a guy on the practice squad, odds are if someone else wants him, he's going to be gone. Here's where this jumped out at me very interesting. If you back up historically, and let's go to the year 2000 for a little bit. This is New England Patriots led by Bill Belichick, the head coach, and Charlie Weis, the offensive coordinator, the two people who molded Josh McDaniels, who arrived in New England in 2001. They were faced with a very interesting but similar predicament. They had Drew Bledsoe as their starting quarterback, obviously the face of the franchise, the clear number one. They had their veteran in John Freeze as the kind of like the veteran, the Brian Hoyer type. They had a young athletic quarterback in Michael Bishop as a developmental prospect. And they had another quarterback named Tom Brady that they really liked. They had already started to fall in love with. But at that time, 3 quarterbacks is what you kept on the roster. 4 was a very rare, very similar to 3 today. The New England Patriots could have put Tom Brady on the practice squad, but they were so afraid of losing him, they put him on the active roster, taking up 4 quarterbacks on the active roster. That put them at an obvious disadvantage, again, similar to a lot of teams that have to play 3 quarterbacks on the active roster today. But instead, the Patriots were able to protect Tom Brady, and of course, the rest is history. By 2001, when Josh McDaniel arrives, he sees how that plan played out. Brady elevated to number 2 and eventually took over the job when Drew Bledsoe got hurt, and of course, Brady became Tom Brady. Not saying that's exactly what can happen here with Aiden O'Connell, but it is very clear, looking at what the Las Vegas Raiders are doing here, is they're following that exact same path. I think it's because they believe they have something special in this rookie quarterback. We've seen a lot of them do. We've seen Aiden O'Connell do a lot of good things in the preseason. There's been a lot of hype behind him. We really liked him coming out of college. I think Raiders fans should really pay attention to this development, because to me, it seems like the Raiders are doing everything they possibly can to protect this kid. And I think it's because they have something special.
Yeah, Nick, you say good things out of O'Connell in preseason. It could be great or even special things out of O'Connell in the preseason. We see his stats, and those say something. 62 attempts, 482 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. But you look at his PFF score for the preseason. Now, I understand it is the preseason, but this is all we've ever seen from the guy. This is the only thing that we can really judge on other than a very good year at Purdue his last year in college. 89.5 grade in the preseason from PFF, 87 passing grade, 66 rushing grade. This is very, very good. I think that he did phenomenal during the preseason. He looked very, very polished, more polished than I thought he would look. He looked like a steal in the draft, like I guess a Brock Purdy-esque type guy that, I don't think he was as far down. He was a fourth rounder. He wasn't, Mr. Irrelevant. But this is a guy who got drafted very late, and he could potentially be better than some of the guys got drafted in front of him. They got a steal in this guy in the fourth round, and I'm really liking him so far. But it's like you said, they have to keep this guy. There's no way, even if he's maybe not up to par on McDaniel's scheme as much as a guy like Brian Hoyer is, or something along those lines, there's no way they could have risked this guy being on a practice squad because of how great he was in the preseason. Someone would have scooped him up instantaneously. This guy could potentially, with a little bit more development, even be a starter on some of these NFL teams right now. So I think it's a really smart move by the Raiders to do this. And I think there's something special here. And I think everyone is starting to see this could be the guy of the future.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate this, is that the Las Vegas Raiders are basically sacrificing a key depth piece, whether it's a ninth offensive lineman, a sixth or seventh wide receiver, another pass rusher, another nickel corner, whatever it may be, taking up a roster spot to make sure Aiden O'Connell stays on the final 53. That's exactly what the New England Patriots did. And again, I'm going to keep hammering this home. Look, I understand, obviously, it's way too early to compare O'Connell to Brady, but the similarities, the fact that McDaniels comes from that Patriots, that Bill Belichick, Charlie Weiss quarterback development strategy, it just seems too familiar to me. It seems too similar. It seems like that's the exact same strategy that they're following in Las Vegas with how they're playing Aiden O'Connell. Again, they don't want to force him if he's not ready, very similar to Brady in 2000. The Patriots kept a veteran backup behind Drew Bledsoe. The Las Vegas Raiders are keeping Hoyer behind Jimmy Garoppolo. They're not ready to make him the number 2 just yet, but they still believe there's something enough there to sacrifice a pivotal roster spot to make sure he stays on the roster. Raiders fans, I really think if you guys are patient, I don't know how this year is going to shape out. It's a brutal AFC. It's a brutal division. But I think there's a chance in the long term you may come out big winners here, because the way the Raiders coaching staff and front office are playing with Aiden O'Connell, it looks like they believe they have something special here.